So, hello everyone. Welcome to another episode of Chatter. Today I am here with Zuby of Zuby Music. Man, welcome to the show.
Happy to be here, man. How you doing?
I'm good. So tell me, why do white women love Zuby?
All women love Zuby.
Any reason why?
And white women are women. So so it only goes to follow. No, not all the women love Zuby. A lot of women do love Zuby. I should stop talking about myself in the third person because that's weird. But man, I've never been asked this question before, so that's a unique question. I don't want to toot my own horn too much, but I think people in general, this goes for men and women, are seeking. People who are truth seekers are speaking fellow truth seekers and truth speakers. And for the entirety of my career, I've been a truth seeker and a truth speaker my entire life, but I think especially over the course of the past few years, past 3 or 4 years, things have gotten so weird, particularly in the modern Western world, that simply being someone who has common sense and has the courage and the ability and the articulation to speak it in a way that is bold and that people understand and it's rational, through everything from the political hysteria to the COVID hysteria that we lived through for the past couple of years, to all of these strange sociocultural elements that are going on. I think a lot of people appreciate that. And so I think from what I do, that's certainly drawn millions of people actually to discover who I am and to appreciate what I do to varying degrees. And then on the lady side, yeah, I mean, I work out, and apparently I'm handsome. I can't judge that one for myself, but I'll go with what people say.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't argue with it. Like if I were you, I would just sort of accept it.
I'll take it. There's far worse things I've been called.
Yeah. So you said there, like you've had millions of people now know who you are, and it seems to be more because of that, the fact that you speak the truth, or that people are drawn to to follow what you're doing. Yeah. More so perhaps than your music, which is, I think, primarily what you started off doing. Yeah. So how do you feel about that? Like, does it bother you? Do you care?
It's a great question, man. I started my music in 2006. I mean, that's when I put out my very first album, Commercial Underground, when I was still in university. And of course, I always thought that the music itself would be the main thing that people would know me for. I've been a full-time musician since November 2011, and for the next 8 years, I was just grinding away on the music front. And then come early 2019, I had this video go viral, the deadlift video, the infamous one, which put me on tons of people's radar. Of course, that had nothing to do with my music itself. A lot of people discovered my music through it. But from that flashpoint onwards, a lot of people have just been following me, thousands of new people discovering me every day now through everything that led on from that, because that led to a bunch of interviews and podcast appearances, television appearances, more social media, viral tweets and videos and things like that. So it's just grown over time. I think early 2019, it somewhat bothered me that all the attention was coming from something outside of my music, but only for a couple of weeks perhaps. And then my mindset shifted. And, the reason I got into music is because I wanted to use my voice to make a positive impact on the world and to inspire and motivate as many people as possible through my message. That's always been my goal, to use my voice, use my words to make a positive impact on the world. And then I changed the way that I was thinking of it. The metaphor I use is I always wanted people to come through the front door. The front door being my music. I wanted people to enter that door and come into the house of Zuby, and you have to come in through the front door. I want you to come in through the front door. And then I was like, you know what? What I'm doing here is impacting people. So whether they come in through the front door, the back door, the side door, the rooftop, whatever, right? Whether they discover me through a tweet, an appearance on a podcast, an article, on Instagram, on YouTube, you know what? That's fine. That's cool. As long as you're in the house, we can have the buffet. I might like the chicken in particular, but you know what? We've got chicken, we've got beef, we've got fish, we've got vegetables, like whatever it is that you like, you can take and select whatever aspects of it of what I do that appeal most to you. Some people are into my music and my podcast and my fitness content and my socio-political commentary and the live events, like multiple things. Some people are like, you know what? I'm mainly into the podcast. You know what? That's fine. Some people, they're just fans of the music. They're not interested in any of the politics and culture war stuff, all of that. That's absolutely fine. Some people, you know, I'm not really a rap fan, but man, I love watching your interviews. I like seeing you on Joe Rogan or chatting with Ben Shapiro or Tucker Carlson, whatever. And I'm like, you know what? That's awesome. And what's also awesome about it is it's actually allowed me to reach a far wider demographic than I ever would have been able to with just my music. So when I was purely just a rapper, my audience was really between the ages of 15 and 30. And that was it really, you know, maybe even 14 to 25 primarily. And now, I mean, whether I'm in the US or I'm in the UK, I mean, I've literally got fans in their 60s and their 70s, from literally children up until elderly people. I've been stopped to take selfies or sign autographs. I get people telling me that they discovered me through their mom. I've met moms telling me they discovered me through their children.
No way.
So it's happening in all sorts of different ways. Maybe their mom is sitting there watching Fox News and I show, or GB News, and I pop up, and then they're telling their friends, oh, you've got to check out this young man, or, you know, their son or daughter might listen to my music or find me on social media or something and tell their parents, yo, like, check out what this guy is saying. So, it's been really strange how it's all happened, but I'm very grateful. And I love the trajectory I'm on right now. And it's honestly an honor to be able to reach and have some kind of positive influence on so many people, and just to see that keep on growing, to go to places and cities I've never been to before in my life and just be received with so much love and just be embraced. It's a bit of a trip. I've spent a lot of time in the States over the past year. I've probably spent about 4 or 5 months in total in the USA. And I've had multiple instances now, many, many times, just going to a place where, you know, I'm very far from home, right? I mean, I'm an independent rapper primarily from the south coast of England, you know, Bournemouth, Southampton way. And, you know, I was in Miami 2 months ago, and I literally got stopped. If I were to estimate, I was there for about 4 days. I'd say I got stopped about 400 to 500 times.
Whoa.
Right? And
that's a lot, man. It's
a lot, but again, by people of all sorts of people. I'm like, when I'm looking at someone, I'm like, how do you even know? I'm looking at someone, kind of like, look at this person. I'm talking to some 68-year-old man, and he's there telling me how he's been following me for years, and he loves what I'm seeing, and he listened to both of my times on Joe Rogan, and he saw me on this and saw me on that, and he bought one of my T-shirts, and I'm just like, wow, like, this is nuts. Like, what? This is amazing, you know? So I'm very grateful for that. So I can't wait to see where it all goes in the future.
Yeah, it's got to be exciting. So yeah, you're moving to America more permanently now then. So what prompted that? Like, why America? Because I got an offer last year to possibly move out to Texas to work for a company of a friend of mine who's actually editing my next book.
Okay.
And I thought about it, and I was like, is that going to be better? Is that going to just be even more insane? Because, like, I look at the political climate here, and I look, you know, the discourse is, like, insane, and we'll get to the madness of that. But why? What draws you about America over staying in the United Kingdom?
Sure, a bunch of things. Number one, it's my biggest audience by far. My music, my books, my merchandise, speaking engagements, podcast listeners, everything is at least 70% of my income already comes from the USA.
Wow.
Yeah. And my biggest audience is over there. I mean, some of that is a matter of scale. I mean, the US has what, five to six times the population of the UK. So it's the biggest English speaking country in the world, and it's one of the richest countries in the world. So there's just so much opportunity there. Another one is just opportunity in general. The USA if you are an entrepreneur or a go-getter or a hustler, someone who really wants to put in work, the UK does not compare. I love the UK, but in terms of opportunity, the USA blows it out the water. There's just, no matter what you do, the thing with the US is it's a country of real absolute diversity, and there are so many extremes. Like, I feel like the UK operates within a window like this, and the USA operates within just this giant. So that's why, I mean, you mentioned the socio-cultural political climate. I mean, in the USA, the political spectrum is like wider. So the people who are conservative you've got conservatives who are like more conservative and more right wing than what you get in the UK, and then you get the lefties who are like more crazy, like
the self-confessed Maoists.
Yeah, like they're even further left, and it leads to all these clashes and chaos, as you're saying. But you also there's so much passion and energy, and the USA, if you think about it, is really like a teenager in terms of countries, right? The UK, I mean, my college at university is about 700 years older than the USA itself, right? Like we're in London right now. There are most of the buildings,
yeah.
Most of the buildings in the city, many of them at least, are older than the USA. It's such a young country. It hasn't even been around 250 years. UK's goes back forever, right? They say in the US, especially in Texas, they say that in the US, 300 years is a long time, and in the UK, 300 miles is a long distance.
Yeah.
Right? And it's very true, right? Just Texas is bigger than the UK.
Yeah,
and that's one state, and it's not even the biggest state. So it's a matter of scale. And there's just so much love there. I've been really embraced there. So I've got to go over and capitalize on some of those opportunities. I think with me, there's a lot of familiarity with it as well, because of course I grew up in Saudi Arabia, and I was actually in the American school system up until I was 11 years old. So growing up, I was exposed to a lot of Americans. Anyone who hears my voice actually normally thinks that I'm American because of where I grew up. And so I've always had a soft spot for the USA. I have a lot of criticisms of it as well. There's many things there that, you know, as someone who's spent a lot of time in both countries now, there are certainly things I prefer about the UK, and there's certainly things I prefer about the US. And I guess this goes for every country that I've been to, right? Nowhere is perfect. Everywhere it has its pros and its cons. Some things work in your favor. Some things don't. It also just depends on who you are, right? I think there are certainly people who like the UK is just a better country for them overall, right? And they could even be Americans, right? There's people in the USA who would probably just be happier in the UK, but there's also people in the UK who would actually just be happier and better off in the US because it just offers more of, you know, it depends on your personality type, what you're trying to achieve, what sector or industry you're in, and so on. Even things like what type of weather do you like, right? If you're someone who really wants to be in a hotter, warmer climate, like there's no equivalent to Miami or Los Angeles or Austin in the UK. So I
feel like I've moved to a different climate. Like I've just moved here from Belfast, and it's too hot. I can't deal with it.
Yeah, so like I like the heat. I grew up in Saudi Arabia, so in the UK, even here, like when the weather's good, it's good. But I'm like, man, this weather, I can go 6 months and the weather's just like crushing me. So yeah, so I plan to be between both countries a lot. I'm not, I know some people fear that I'm kind of like abandoning the UK or something like that. It's like, no, it's not like that. I've got family here.
No, you're hedging your bets.
I'm just
1 foot in each in case
the
other collapses.
I don't even view it that way, man. I mean, I've grown up around the world, man. My family's originally from Nigeria. I was raised in the Middle East. I was born in England, spent, best part of the last 2 decades here. I went to an American school for a while. It's my biggest audience over there. Beyond that, I've traveled to another 35 or so different countries. So it's a bit of a cliched phrase, but, I do feel like I'm this sort of citizen of the world type of person. And to me, the world is, despite its size, modern technology makes the world actually very small. So despite the fact that things might be 1,000 miles away, both from a time perspective and from a technology perspective, actually it's pretty close. So as far as I'm concerned, Austin, Texas is as far away from London as, it takes the same time to fly from London to Austin or Dallas as it takes to drive from Bournemouth to Glasgow. Right?
Mm.
And I've driven from Bournemouth to Glasgow many times. So it's like, well, it's 8 hours is 8 hours, right? It's like, well, it's 8 hours. So yeah, it might be, this one might be distance-wise is thousands of miles away, and that one's only a couple hundred, but it's 8 hours. I mean, 8 hours isn't that long. If you took off right now, and it's as we record this, it's about 2 p.m. If you flew right now to Houston or Dallas or Austin, you would land at about 4 p.m., like with the time difference.
Yeah.
Right? So you've lost 2 hours essentially. So it's like, right? So the way it is people are, man, Zuby, you're traveling so much and doing this. Like, how are you doing? And I'm like, it's number one, I've been doing it my whole life. And number two, it's just time to me. Like, it's just passing time. You can watch a couple movies, read a book, play some Nintendo Switch, go to sleep, do whatever, and you're there.
Totally. So, I mean, to sort of go towards the madness a little bit here.
Sure.
There's a few things I really want to get your take on.
Oh, boy.
Just yeah. And again, I'm hoping that these are questions that you'll never have been asked.
Okay.
That was my goal, and that's always I've been trying to do that more and like try and find things that you've never been asked. So, I mean, you can have the choice. Do you want to ease into it, or do you want me?
I don't mind, man. I'm good.
Right. Well, then let's go for the crazy.
Okay.
Is Klaus Schwab LARPing as Emperor Palpatine?
Man, we've got some megalomaniacs in this world. We really do. I think we always have, and it's kind of just been exposed over the past couple of years because there's been this power play, right? Just the emergency measures, multiple countries, all of a sudden, there's an emergency. So therefore, screw your human rights, screw your civil liberties, screw democracy, screw everything that we have been preaching about for the past few decades, and do exactly what we tell you. And in fact, lots of these random unelected people are going to have a lot of power over you. I mean, I don't know who voted for Klaus Schwab and Bill Gates and Anthony Fauci and all these people in various different countries, right? Like there's the ones who extend their tentacles into multiple countries, and then each individual country also has had its sort of tyrants and dictators who were appointed rather than people saying, okay, this is the person who we trust to lead us through this thing. So yeah, he's a weird guy. Like I don't really, I guess he's been around for a while, but I don't think many people knew the name Klaus Schwab until the past few years. So he's seeming like this type of Bond villain who has this plan for the world.
And it's just insane, man. But that's actually right. That's what it feels like. It's like a real life Bond villain. It's like Elliot Carver in The World Is Not Enough. Like that's what it feels like.
Yeah.
Or not even The World Is Not Enough. Tomorrow Never Dies.
Okay. Yeah.
Go get my Bond.
Yeah. So, man, it's odd. It's very odd how it's interesting to me on a kind of psychological perspective, though. How, I mean, I guess this is not a new thing. We have in the past had many individuals, dictators, people who just are 100% confident they know what is best for everybody in the world. And they not just that they know what's best, but they also should have the power to implement it, right? Oh, I have this idea. It's called the Great Reset. This is what everybody should do and must do, and this is what the future is going to look like. I'm old, and I'm not even going to be here for the future, but nonetheless, this is the plan. This is the plan, and like it or not, what is it? You will own nothing, and you will be happy. And It's an interesting phenomenon to me that anyone can have that kind of audacity. I mean, I'm a pretty confident person, and But I certainly have the humility to understand that I'm not number one, that I do not know what the absolute best thing is, with no doubt, for everybody on the planet, let alone that I should have the power and the the ability to control everybody on the planet, their thoughts, their beliefs, their actions, what they should eat, what they must inject, where they must live, what they should own and not own, and so on. Like, that's pretty mind-blowing to me.
So what if they're trying to bring us back to the original philosophy of the cynics? That you didn't need, like, what does a man need more than the coat on his back and the freedom of the world to go and just live? Like, maybe they're trying to take us back to that. Maybe they feel like that we've been burdened by too many possessions and materialism, and we should stop concerning ourselves with all of these things, because it's better if they have them, and they're just trying to like free us all from that.
Yeah, I mean, if they themselves were these ultra minimalists, then maybe I'd be able to believe that it was, if it was like, they're giving up all of their own wealth and possessions and material goods and whatever, and then they're encouraging everyone else to do the same, then maybe I'd be like, okay. No, maybe not for everyone, but I can see where they're coming from. But no, they're raking in their billions and their trillions, and they want you eating bugs while they continue to eat filet mignon. And they want you to live in a pod as they live in their mansions. And they want you to sacrifice everything for the so-called climate catastrophe as they continue to buy beachfront property.
Yeah. I mean, I guess the argument would be maybe they'll sell it, but look, it's not going to be worth very much at that point.
Exactly. If you're that convinced that the world is going to, you've got 10 years or whatever they say it is to mitigate this climate catastrophe, and that all of these cities are going to be underwater and so on and so forth, which, by the way, they've been saying since before either of us were even born, and they've been wrong all the time, then let me, I generally, actions speak louder than words is a well-known phrase, but that's something it's really true. I mean, if you want to see what someone believes, then don't just listen to them, watch their actions. So if you're saying you care about all this, but then you're buying very expensive beachfront property and you're flying around in private jets and you're doing this and you're doing that, then it's reasonable for people to be cynical and to question your motives, right? So one thing about me is whether or not I totally support somebody's beliefs, ideas, or ideology or whatever, I typically respect consistency, right? I respect consistency. So if those are your values and your principles, and that's what you go on, then I'm like, cool. Like if you're consistent with that, and that's how you live, whether or not I am fully in agreement or have the exact same beliefs, I can respect it. What I don't respect is just this insane level of hypocrisy where you're preaching one thing and then you are literally doing the complete opposite. It doesn't matter in what sector it is. This could be personal, it could be political, it could be religious, it could be ideological, whatever it is, right? I mean, if you are out and about preaching about the importance of eating a plant-based diet and going vegan and behind the scenes you're eating steaks and chicken and what, then I can't respect that, right? If you're preaching all that and then you live the lifestyle, I might be like, you know what, like, veganism isn't for me. It's not my choice. And I have various arguments against, but I'm like, I can respect that. It's like, cool, like that's what you believe and that's what you're doing. You say this is your religion or this is your belief system or this is whatever, and you live, or at least attempt to live in line with that, then I can respect it. It doesn't mean everyone has to or is going to follow the exact thing. I mean, we of course not, right? There's almost, how many people do we have now? Almost 8 billion people in the world. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of diversity there, which is cool. But I can respect that. And I think that's been one of the most frustrating things actually about the past 2 years in particular. And I know you've noticed this as well, is just it's the hypocrisy, right? had, it doesn't matter whether you're talking about the US or the UK or all these countries, you've had leaders, so-called leaders, who have been telling people, you must do this, whether it's wear a mask or stay at home or don't travel or do this or stand this far apart from each other, whatever. And we've all seen over the past 2 years them, whether it's having parties or going to restaurants or going around and not wearing their masks or breaking all of their own rules. And that's what makes it doubly frustrating. It's annoying enough that you're making all these infringements on people's liberties and freedom, but you're not even following the rules that you're putting on everyone else. And to the props of British society, I think people here, once they really saw that, I think there was a big enough backlash to really put an end to it.
Thankfully.
Yeah, thankfully. It's a shame it took. I don't think it should have taken Boris Johnson being caught having parties as he canceled Christmas for millions of British people for the public to wake up and go, wait, something here is wrong. But I'm glad that when that happened, they held him accountable and put enough pressure on him that he either had to, he probably was pushed in a position where he felt either had to resign or drop these mandates and restrictions because people were not happy with it. There's other places where it happened and people kind of like excused it or it just kind of got blown away very quickly. But I think in this, for so-called democracy to work in any extent, you have to be able to hold people accountable. I think it's often forgotten that public, these public workers, politicians, like they're paid for with your tax money, right? They're supposed to work for you. They are our employees, right? It's not supposed to be the other way around. No. I think this is often forgotten with politicians. It's often forgotten with the police. It's often forgotten, like you are supposed to be a public servant, right? It's not supposed to be that you are just above everyone and above the law and, rules for thee, but not for me kind of situation. That's not what it's supposed to be like. And I think that often gets forgotten by the people in those positions, but also by the general public. People forget that we're not meant to just be subjects in a dictatorship. Like if you elect officials based off of what they're claiming and certain promises that they make, then hold them accountable to it. If they say, look, we're going to do X, Y, and Z, or we're going to achieve this, or we're not, when that time comes, you should look at it and say, okay, did you do what you said you were going to do? And if you didn't, there should be some tough questions. There should be pressure put on them. And you see this dramatic. I see this a lot in the USA, especially with some of the governors and the mayors and things like that, where they make all of these promises and this and that, and they literally get away with murder because they're not held accountable. They're not held accountable. Like, people will vote for them and they'll say, we're going to do this and this, and they'll have all these promises. And I'm like, you have to follow up. You have to follow up with them, right? If you've been voting for, like you've got places in the U.S. Most of the big cities are, virtually all the big cities in the U.S. are run by the same political party, right? They're all run by the Democrats. I don't like to get into super partisan stuff, but just making this point, some of them for decades, multiple decades, and in many cases, they've declined. They've gotten worse in terms of crime, in terms of homelessness, in terms of as the taxes continue to go up and so on, and people aren't holding them accountable and saying, hey, look, you've been saying you were going to make Los Angeles better, or you were going to fix this in San Francisco, or you're going to do this, and you're not doing it. But instead, what happens is people just keep voting for them again and again. And it's like, well, even from that politician's perspective, what is the incentive for them to do anything? It's like, well, if you're going to vote for me anyway, and I can just get away with all this and I can keep stealing your money and not making anything better and living this big life. Yeah. And I know you're also not even going to vote for my opponents, then there's no incentive. There's no incentive anymore.
Yeah, and just to like, for an example, on the other side, like the Republicans consistently preach fiscal conservatism,
yes,
and do nothing of the sort.
No,
so it's not just the Democrats.
No, it's not just one party. I'm using that because I think it's the biggest example.
Yeah.
And because of the way voting patterns happen in the States, it's all the big cities, pretty much all the big cities that are like well known in the USA, are run by Democrats. So Republicans generally get more votes in the suburbs and the rural areas and so on. But I think when we're talking about most places in the world, the focus tends to be on cities, because those are the ones that it's the New Yorks and the Los Angeleses and the Chicagos and so on that kind of move the needle. Just like in the UK, you've got tons of cities and towns in the UK, but let's be real, London is London. Yeah. London is kind of the epicenter that drives things, and
it's
then
like a third of the population.
and then everywhere else is kind of is more secondary or tertiary. So it matters. Like I don't even know. I mean, everyone knows who the London mayor is. I mean, do people even know the mayor of Birmingham or Manchester or Leeds or Bristol? Like, I don't think. A lot of people don't. I think a lot of people, even in those cities, might not actually know who
the mayor of Birmingham is.
Yeah.
That said, I don't even know who the mayor of Belfast is. Although they have it's like more of a symbolic role, so they don't have that much power. But to go back here to the hypocrisy, because like that is consistently stunning to me. What age are you?
35.
35, right? So you're a bit older than me. Not that much older. 7 years. Was it always this nuts? Were people always just this blatantly hypocritical? Because I was talking about this with my best friend the other day, and he was just like, no, they were always hypocrites, Josh. You just didn't see it. And I was just like, well, maybe that's true. So like, what? You've been sort of watching this a bit longer than I have, and maybe you were sort of watching politics, because it feels like since about 2010, 2012-ish, things have really like gone off the rocker a bit.
Yes.
So like you were watching things a bit before that, because I was like 18, 2012. I was just coming out of school. So it's hard for me to really like get a genuine perspective on it. So was it always this mad? Were the people always this like? Because the example that springs to mind right now is the abortion debate that went on in America recently with that leaked Roe v. Wade thing, and then obviously like I'll not go into like what's going on with that, or like we'll not get into abortion, but like they were preaching like it's my body, my choice. Like no one should have the decision.
After the past 2 years,
or after the past 2 years, like Kamala Harris, like tweeting about like we're approaching this moment where the government might have control over your body, and I was just like, you have to be trolling. Yeah. Like you can't be this hypocritical,
dude. What about these people who have been talking about that? A systemically racist policy is something that disproportionately affects black people and minorities and whatever, and then the whole vaccine passport situation, right, in places like in New York City, the majority of young black Americans in New York City were not vaccinated, and they literally made a policy that would ban the majority of young black people in not just New York City. They did it in San Francisco. They did it in LA. All these so-called progressive places. They literally implemented this policy that's, number one, directly discriminatory, like an actual segregationist policy, right? And yes, you can claim they claim it's under the banner of health and safety or whatever. But again, it's the same point you're making. It's just showing doubly so. So number one, you've got this whole my body, my choice thing. Government, don't tell me what to do with my body.
Which I'm on board with.
You've literally got people trying to force injections into people. And that's what you're advocating for. And now you want to conveniently turn around. And I made this point way prior to this whole Roe versus Wade thing, because it's, I'm a pro-life person. I'm very much opposed to abortion. But I was like, again, it's the point I was making earlier. If you're going to claim a certain position, and that's even your slogan and mantra, is my body, my choice, right?
Wear a fucking
right. If that is your slogan, then at least I may disagree with you on this issue, but at least be consistent. Like, at least be consistent with it. Right. And that went out the window. And again, the same with the segregation. So to come back to answer your original question, it hasn't always been like that. It hasn't always been like this.
And what changed?
I think this is a great question. It's a really good question, because it's something I think about a lot. It's a number of factors, I think. A lot of people point to social media. Social media is a factor. It's a factor because, when was the first, the combination of social media and smartphones, which really came together around 2006, 2007, and really maybe by about 2010, 2011, we reached a point where maybe most people had a smartphone and were on some type of social media. Mm-hmm. So I think that perfectly coincides with that period, because most people would say it's about 10 years ago when it really started to accelerate. That's a factor. I think that's an accelerant. I think the much bigger factor, and I don't hear a lot of people making this point or talking about it. I think the bigger factor is, for the first time in history, and the first place anywhere, we have actually reached a point where there is proper equality under the law. If you think back, and the final domino that anyone could have argued was same-sex marriage. When was that?
2012, I think.
It's around the same time.
Yeah.
Right? When did all the trans stuff kick off? It's the same time. Right? That was the final domino. After that, all of the important fights had been fought and won. For the first time ever, human history. If you go back to any time period prior to 2012, you could point to a law in the books and say, that discriminates against that group of people. From the blatant ones, from, having slavery and some people not even being considered citizens, to some people being denied voting rights, some people, being allowed to pay one group less for the same work than others, there's all types of discrimination, and there's still many discriminatory laws on the books in different countries around the world. But in the UK, in the US, in Canada, and so on, the final thing that someone could have pointed at, and this is not an argument for nor against same-sex marriage, but that was the last one that someone could say, that law discriminates against a group of people, right? And that was it. And I think now there's this situation where you have people, the entire left side of the political aisle, really, for all of these decades and centuries, the fight was for equality, right? It was for equal rights. That was a big part. Of course, there's the financial and social factor, but the big thing was always look, the proper role of liberals, as far as I'm concerned, is to be champions of civil rights and equality, equal treatment under the laws, in individual rights, right? Treat people as individuals, don't discriminate against people based on their race or their ethnicity or their sex or their sexuality and so on and so forth. And all these times, as I said, there was always a group you could point at and say, look, that's not fair. We want to advocate for this. Think back to all the civil rights movements they had. It had a clear goal, right? We want to get voting rights for this group of people. We want voting rights for women. We want voting rights for black people. We want this group to be able to buy property. We want this discrimination to stop. It shouldn't be fair. It shouldn't be legal to do this, do that. It's all been won. And that's when I noticed that the left side of the aisle went off the hinges, because you have all these activist-minded people who want to fight for something. Right? They want to fight for something. There's got to be some victim group. Someone's got to be being oppressed somewhere. And I think this is also why they've latched on so incredibly and doggedly hard to the transgender thing, because it wasn't even in the conversation before 2012. Right? It wasn't in the even the word transgender wasn't really in the lexicon. Transsexual was. Yeah. Transvestite was. But this whole transgender thing, and even now when people say, I'm fighting for trans rights, what does that mean? They already have them. Everyone already has equal rights. So I think that's a part of it, especially from the left side of the aisle. And naturally, the right side of the aisle, it tends to react to what's happening, for what's being pushed from the other side. So I think it's created that conflict. And then, like I said, it's been fueled by social media. And then also what people have, or what people feel they have in common has decreased. I don't think necessarily. I think some of it is real and some of it is artificial. But I think that due to the media and due to the political rhetoric, the focus is always on the differences. if you think of it, right?
Yeah.
The political and social clashes, it's never what do we have in common. People are being trained to focus on the difference, right? When we were growing up, and again, you see this in different ways. When we were growing up, I imagine we both learned, like if it was even, I don't even think it needed to be explicitly taught, but
I don't know. I don't remember ever being like outright stated, even in Northern Ireland, where we have like still the remnants of more of a conflict than you maybe have in other parts of the UK. But I don't think it was ever like outright stated that, like, it was just like everyone's equal. It's like, obviously.
Yeah.
Like, you know, it's the first generation in history where that was the case and everyone was just like on board with it.
Exactly. And I think this is why people like yourself and myself, we have this recoil against this neo-racism agenda, right? Where this weird woke thing, right? Where you have people who call themselves, you know, they use the banner anti-racist, but they would like for me to see you explicitly as a white man. They want you to see me explicitly as a black man, a person of color. And now we need to somehow adjust our behavior and the way we talk to each other to account for this factor, right? You literally have these people saying that being colorblind is racist, right? Right? That you should see color. You should treat people differently.
Do you know the thing about that is that doesn't tell me shit about you.
Of course it doesn't. And it never did. This is why racism itself was always stupid.
Well, yeah.
Right? It's why it was always stupid.
Other reasons,
but like the notion that someone's skin color or ethnicity or where their ancestors are from or whatever that tells you what's in their brain and what's on their heart and their character and all this, it was always a ridiculous idea. And obviously in the past it had gotten taken to ridiculous and brutal levels. But it's such a silly notion, but it's like they're bringing back that notion that, oh, actually, yeah, it is really important, right? Forget about their character and their individuality. Like, no, what matters is that man is white and that person is not white, right? And so you now need to, and then you have to factor in their sexuality, and then you have to factor in their class, and then you have to factor in their age and their gender and all of this. And it's just like, how about we just treat people as individuals and treat people fairly, and we all agree that everyone has a right to dignity and to not be unfairly discriminated against or physically harmed or attacked or enslaved or whatever. How about we just treat each other as human beings, as brothers and sisters, and we're not all going to get on all the time and agree with everything, but even if you don't like someone, you don't just have a right to attack them or assault them, right? Like, we agree. And what's funny with it as well is everyone actually believes this, for the most part, right? Like if you just go outside and you interact in the real world, right? You see, actually,
anyone like outside that room, I don't think anyone would disagree.
That's what I mean. Like, everyone actually does get on, but then in the, you know, what they're pushing in the schools and in the universities and all these different areas, and that's another part of it as to why I think it's sprung up over the past 10 years, is because this is what was being pushed back then. And now those people are graduating and going into the real world and even going into positions of power. And so this ideology has gone from just the dark corners of academia and the social sciences into corporations and into governments and everything like that. And now you have woke capitalism, and everyone's suddenly inclusion, diversity, equity. Everyone's got a diversity officer, and people of color this, and BIPOC that, and white people bad that, and whatever. And I had to look
that up the other day.
Yes.
I saw it in this so there was something I saw and I had to look at it. I was like, what the fuck is BIPOC?
What is it? Yeah.
And then it's like, I can't even remember what it was.
Black Indigenous people of color.
Yes.
And then in the UK they have BAME.
Yes.
Black and minority ethnic. And it's like, how about just people? So yeah, this has been a long answer, but I think that those are a lot of the reasons why. I think also, and this is a big factor, I do think also that as a consequence of our societies becoming so successful and prosperous and peaceful, there's an element of boredom and free-floating anxiety, and just, I think people are also, just by being so connected, are also becoming a bit more isolated. People are spending more time indoors and not exercising and eating as much. And then you exacerbate that over the past 2 years with all the lockdowns and the forced social isolation and so on, and the masking, all of that stuff. It's not good for the human psyche. Actually, it's good. It's good to have comfort, and it's good that we've achieved a point where obesity is a far bigger problem than starvation. Yeah. Again, that's pretty new,
which is wild.
Right. That's very new, right? Yeah. That's a new thing. So we have abundance, but abundance brings lack, creates problems. Overabundance also creates problems. And when people have so much, it also, I think it also reduces people's, increases sensitivity and reduces tolerance of any type of potential offense or affront. I think this is why we live in this very emotionally incontinent age where, people are
emotionally incontinent.
Right? Like everything's
a fucking great phrase, man.
like people can't control their
episode. That Zuby on emotional incontinence.
but it's true, right? You see but before the COVID, maybe you were hearing about safe spaces and trigger warnings and words being violence and everyone. This is my no. That made me feel. What's the phrase they always use?
Triggered.
No, triggered. No? But they always use what's the word they always use? They want harm, like the word harmful speech or making me feel unsafe. Mm. Right? I can't talk to him. He makes me feel unsafe or whatever. That trigger. It's very pathological language. This is the language you'd use if you're a therapist who's talking to someone who's come back from a war and they've seen their friends get, people talking about having PTSD and having anxiety and trauma and all of these things. It's this therapy language. And you've also seen there's various signs showing that people's mental health is a lot of people, it's declining, especially with young people. And as far as I'm concerned, that's largely it's actually a problem of abundance in many ways. It's like you have to, as human beings, it's kind of getting philosophical. I mean, you don't pick whether or not you struggle. Like, we all struggle. Everyone. Like, it doesn't matter if you're so-called privileged or underprivileged or your nationality, race, gender, all this stuff doesn't matter. Everyone has their struggles. It might not, oftentimes it's not visible, right? Mm-hmm. You can see someone who on the surface, it looks like, man, like I want that guy's life. Like they've got all this money and they're famous and they've done this and they've done that. And then, that person committed suicide or like, you don't know what demons people are battling. Everyone's got all these different challenges. And in a way, some challenges are kind of just handed to you and you can't do anything. Well, you can do something about it, but you just kind of have to play those cards. But also there's an element of humanity that seeks challenge and conflict. And I think you can do that in healthy ways. And you can also do it in really unhealthy ways. I think you always do it. Everyone does it. Everyone does it. So for me, I go to the gym. Right. That's me creating my own hardship. I don't have to go and lift all those weights and go on the treadmill and do this and that.
Then you wouldn't be Jackson.
Yeah, but I'm voluntarily choosing to create hardship in my life. I've started recently relearning Spanish to get back up to fluency on it, and I don't have to do that. I'm intentionally making my life harder, and I'm challenging and stimulating my brain on a daily basis. I'm pushing my body to get stronger. I'm doing a lot of these things, even my career path. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I mean, I'm at a position now, thank God, where, I mean, I could not work for the next 20 years and I'd be all right. Right? I couldn't have said that a few years ago, but like, I'm doing pretty well now. And but I'm like, gosh, like, no, I mean, that would be terrible. I'd go insane, right? Like I'd go nuts. It's like, no, like I want to have this challenge or I have to seek that out. But if you don't do that in a healthy way, I think it manifests in bad ways. This is what a lot of the nastiness you see on Twitter and on social media and people popping off at each other all the time and anger and people wanting to go fight and burn down the streets and put up signs and whatever. I think it's like there's this energy and desire for struggle that needs to come out somehow, and it's kind of spitting out in all these random directions, which are often hurting other people, rather than focusing on yourself and going, okay, let me take on a challenge. Let me learn something new. Let me do something hard. Let me write a book. Let me start a podcast. Let me run a marathon. Let me like lose some weight. Let me do something, because it has to be expelled in some way. And I think a lot of people are not doing that. People are very sedentary. A lot of people are not exercising at all. They're not really building on themselves. And I think if you are not building, here's another interesting philosophical idea. I believe that men are always building or destroying. I think that as a man, and as a boy even, I mean, you can see this if you watch boys, they're always building or destroying, right?
Right.
They're creating. You could look at 3-year-old boys playing. They're either building a tower or blocks, or they're kicking it down. They're making a sandcastle, or they're knocking it down, or they're knocking down someone else's. Right? They're playing football, or they're fighting each other. And it's been the case throughout history. If you think our whole society, this is going to sound sexist, but it's not, because it's just a fact. Virtually everything physical that exists was built by men. Right? Everything you can physically see, everything in this room was created by men. Right? All the buildings around the city, everything was built by men. Men build.
In a primary sense, yeah.
Yeah, men build. Like literally, physically build, construct things. They also freaking destroy a lot. Right? So look at all the wars that have taken place. Look at the wars taking place right now, whatever. Who's doing the fighting? Who's doing the killing? Who's bombing and blowing up the building? It's men. Men build, destroy, build, destroy, build, destroy, like in a very physical sense. Yeah. I think women build and destroy as well, but it's not in as literal and material a way. And, some of this is just, we've got that testosterone, right? We just have 20 times the testosterone level as the average woman. And that energy can be used for really, really positive and constructive things. But I think when it's not channeled well, it manifests in very destructive ways, right? Who does all the murders? Who does all the mass shootings? It's men.
Yeah.
Primarily young men.
All the war reminds me of a great clip from it was Jordan Klepper, who was on the Daily. He was a correspondent sort of guy for the Daily Show, and he was at like a Trump rally or something, and he said someone was like, yeah, well, we can't have Hillary as president because she'll start a war, and he just went, haven't all the wars in history been started by men? And the person was just like, we're stumped. It's a great point. It's true. Yeah, it speaks to what you're saying.
Yeah, it's reality, man. And I think this is also why, when people get in these conversations about gender equality and sex and if you look at the top, if you look at the apex of most fields and sectors, you will find predominantly men there. Also, if you look at the bottom, you will find primarily men there, right? And there's something called the apex fallacy, which is that people tend to focus on the top but not at the bottom. So you always will hear about how the majority of CEOs and highest paid people and, people on the executive board at different countries or whatever, it's predominantly men, and, they'll often frame it in this way. How often do they talk about the fact that most homeless people are men? Or most people who die of drug overdoses are men? Or most people who commit suicide are men, and all of that? So it's like men are just more, there's more of that extreme. Right? There's just more of that extremes.
Do you think it's that sort of testosterone driven either creation or destruction that's causing that?
I think largely because I think every man knows this, and we don't. I think it's something that's not spoken about often. I think a lot of conversations about masculinity and femininity are sort of avoided these days because we're supposed to be these gender neutral beings, but we're really not. Like, men and women we're very similar in some ways, but we're also very different. And I think every man knows that as a boy growing up into manhood, you have to control and channel your masculine energy, right? Like there's a natural aggression and competitiveness and fight that's just within you as a man, which makes sense because our ancestors were fighters and warriors and built all of this stuff, right? Like,
I mean, if you were a little bitch, you weren't going to reproduce.
Yeah, it makes sense,
like,
right?
You were the first one killed on the front lines, or you were the guy in that final struggle for that last bit of food. Like, you were the one that won the fight.
And what the modern day version of that is? It's sports. It's sports. The sportsmen and the way people respond and react to them. I mean, what is football? You're just trying to kick a ball into a net. What's basketball? You're trying to throw a ball into a net. What's American football? You're trying to run, or rugby, trying to run with a ball past the line.
Really
right?
stupid games. When
They're really silly. But do you know what's interesting is they use the same skills that you would need to be a good hunter, right? Hitting a target, athleticism, speed, endurance. So top athletes probably would have been, if we lived in a more primitive societies, like top athletes would have been like the top hunters and the top fighters and the top warriors. MMA, look at MMA, literally. It's a gladiatorial arena. And why are women so attracted to those sportsmen? Oh, he just kicks a football around. Like, why is he so hot or whatever, right? But like women love that. And I think it's very primal. It's very primal, and men admire it, right? You watch guys watching a football match, or it doesn't matter if it's American football or British football, and they're going crazy, and it's interesting. So I think, we're very advanced in a way, but we still have, of course, like all of this primal programming. And I think that's part of why playing sports is so good, because number one, again, it gets out that energy. It teaches you about teamwork and bonding and competitiveness, and you have to have all of that. So I think that's what it largely is. And I think as a man, I know I've felt this like my entire life, which is that there's this energy and spirit which could be destructive, right? You have a capacity to damage. Like I'm a big, strong guy. I have the physical capacity to hurt someone or to break something or to crush. But no, you channel that towards something good and something honorable and kindness and generosity and building and creation. Like everything I do is creating. And I think that's a great use of that energy. And if I'm going to attack something, I'm going to attack weights, right? I'm going to attack the gym. I'm going to build my body and so on. But I think if you don't do that, then it'll come out in some other way, right? In extreme versions, it comes out in physical violence, right? There's always the guys who are starting the fights or who want to rob someone or assault someone or kill something or do that. Like it can come out in these awful ways. And at scale, this ends up with wars and clashes and tribal battles. But it can also just come out in like other toxic ways, like going online and being that person who's sitting behind the keyboard, ranting and raving at everyone every day and cussing people out and leaving nasty comments and, leaving nasty comments towards men, nasty comments at women and so on. And it's also men who, if you notice, it's mostly men who are most of the internet trolls are men. Mm-hmm. Most of the people in prison are men. Most of the people at the top, most of the people at the bottom. So it's like, I don't know how much this has been like studied. Probably not that much in this modern era, but it's interesting to me because I notice these patterns and I'm like, this is men doing this. Women have their own virtuous and pathological behaviors and some of it overlaps, but it's different. And with men, it tends to be more physical. Again, you see that with young people. I mean, if you think, how do boys bully each other? It's physical. Yeah. Right? Yeah. How do girls bully each other? It's psychological and verbal.
Cut you out.
They cut you out, right? Yeah. Right? They'll cut you out the group. No, you can't sit with us. No one talked to that girl today because she's now. Boys don't do that. Boys don't do that, right? When I was in school, they fight, right? They fight, push each other around. Someone gets punched, whatever, and so
it's all fine.
And I think this is also why social media is more psychologically damaging to teenage girls than teenage boys.
Oh,
right.
I had never considered that.
Mm-hmm. That's why. Because it's the social and psychological aspect. Boys, it's harder to, that female style of bullying can continue on the internet. With boys, they're actually safe once they're away from that because it's not physical. So they're safer. Sure, they can still be psychologically bullied, but it's less common.
I get a real kick out of hater comments. It's really funny. I call my friend. I'm like, you got to get on the comment section now on this episode. You got to see what this guy's saying.
It's weird though, isn't it? Like, don't you find it strange that people spend their time doing that? Yeah. I mean, you're trying to build something, right? You're a builder. You're creating, right? You're working constantly on creating things. I imagine that at no point in your day do you go, you know what? Let me go hate on the internet for 30 minutes. Let me go see what that other man is building and try to tear it down. It's like, no, I'm trying to build. I'm trying to build my thing.
You know what's funny? Half the time when I see something stupid on Twitter, I'm scrolling. I see something stupid. Half the time I go to write the comment
and delete it. I do that multiple times a day.
It's not even worth it. Like,
I do it multiple times a day, and I'm just like, you know what? Like, I can't let this throw me off my mission. And so it's interesting, man. Like I've never formally studied psychology, but I've spent a lot of time over the past 15 years, especially just through my own life and experiences and what I do, thinking a lot about all of these topics, which is why I have these random informed hypotheses about why certain things are the way they are, because I just see these patterns and it's like, why is it that way? Or why do women do that? Or why do men do this? Like, what's the reason for those differences? And how were these behaviors somehow linked to our kind of biology? Because I think a big part of what surrounds a lot of this and a lot about human interaction, really, and again, I don't think most people really think of it this way. And I guess you wouldn't want to explicitly think of it this way, but I think humans are always vying for social status. I think that's just something that's always gone on and is always going on, right? There's this kind of multiple hierarchies that exist in the world, and most people implicitly know somewhere around where they are. Like, I think most women know where they are in the female pecking order. Most men know where they are in the male pecking order and the overall society pecking order. And most people, especially if you're competitive and ambitious. I mean, what even is ambition? Ambition is trying to climb the ladder. If when a woman says, I want a guy who's ambitious, that means a guy who is trying to climb up that competence hierarchy, as Jordan Peterson would call it, right? And you see this all the time. It explains, I think, a lot about politics, right? They're always trying to climb. Like, why do you even want to be president? Why do you even want to have that? It's like, well, I mean, that's pretty freaking high on that ladder. And no one wants to be at the bottom of it. And we're all in different places on different things. You can simultaneously be in all these different places on all these different things, right? If I walk into an MMA class and I haven't done MMA before, I'm going to be towards the bottom of that thing. But then if it's something I'm very proficient at, right, then I'm like, oh, okay, like, cool. I'm near the top of this one. And it makes sense because it's largely based on mating, right? It's based on mating because women typically look towards the top of various different hierarchies to determine, as do men, and see, okay, like, for men, it might be we're a little more visual, and maybe we're looking primarily at
physical attributes rather than
and why is that? It's because what you actually are filtering for, again, not that explicitly, is signs of fertility. Right? So all the things that make a woman attractive are things that symbolize fertility, things that suggest fertility. The things that women are often attracted to are things that symbolize security and safety, right? Whether that's big muscles, or it's having money, or it's being very competent at something, or whatever, or it's having loyalty is a factor. And it's like we're always looking for that and trying to raise it up. So, and again, there's positive ways of doing that. As they say, there's two ways to have the biggest, the tallest building in the city. One is to build the tallest building. The other is to knock down all the others. So
I thought you were going to say the other one is to buy it.
Oh, buy it. Yeah, well, the others to knock the other ones down. So when you see this hater behavior, or someone trying to claw away at you or rip down what you're building, it's like, oh, okay. Instead of you trying to raise yourself up, you're trying to tear this person down. Yeah. Right? It doesn't matter. You can go look at a fitness model's Instagram or Twitter, right? And he posts a photo when he's got a six pack and he's looking good. He's using steroids. Oh, he's this. Oh, I used to be bigger than him. Right? It could be whether he is or he isn't, right? but it's like there's people who, some people's brains go, man, you look great. Good job. Other people are like, that's inspiring. And then some people are like, you get Myron, right? Myron, yeah. And then other people, it triggers them, right? Because it makes them feel smaller, like they're lower, like, oh, I don't look like that. So it's hard for me to look like that too. So I'm going to tear him down, right? Someone pulls up in a Lamborghini. What are the comments? Someone's like, man, sick car. Someone's like, man, I wonder what that guy does. Oh, that's inspiring, whatever. Someone else, I bet he's got a small dick.
I make that comment.
Right?
I make not about the nice car. Right? I want to clarify this. I don't say this about the nice car. I say that when when someone drives past and their car is so fucking loud. It's just obscenely, unnecessarily loud. I'm just thinking that guy. His penis must be so fucking huge. Like,
so man, like, dude, I love human sort of social dynamics is such an interesting it's such an interesting field to me, and that's despite all the madness, that's been one of the things that's been really interesting about the past couple of years, because we've really seen some strange human behavior. And again, what I'm talking about, it also explains this sort of authoritarian Karen type behavior, right? Where someone all of a sudden, it could be a flight attendant, it could be the person at the door of a restaurant, it could be just like, someone not with some right, and suddenly they feel they can now tell you what to do, right? Put on your mask, pull it up over your nose, stand here, walk in this direction, do this, do that, and some people revel in it. They love it, and again, that's weird to me, but I understand it, because it's like, oh, you right now have like you've got a little thing above me on this little social hierarchy, so you want to now wield that power, which you normally would not have, to tell other people what to do, and it makes you feel big, and it makes you feel like, oh, okay, like I'm up here, and other people are kind of lower down. You see this on a big level with the politicians, right? Like all the mandates, all the restrictions, like, haha, look, I've got this power, I've got the ring of power, I'm gonna wield it, and so on. And then you see the way people fall in line. You've seen the power of conformity, people not wanting to stick out or be the odd one out, or, conflict avoidance. So there have been so many different things at play.
They're all Boromir. That they're all Boromir. They think they can, they think they can use the ring for good. They think they're doing this thing for the right thing. So on this psychology, to sort of back up a little bit, we kind of started a little bit with this. There's two questions I have for you. Is that, I'll roll these into one, because I feel like you'll give a big answer. They're kind of intertwined.
Sure.
So you mentioned that you think that we've arrived at this place where there are no more like social like inequalities. There's no more like oppression at like a legal level as such, right?
On a legal level.
There's no like laws and like things preventing people from doing whatever they want, basically. In a sense.
Certainly not on a. I wouldn't want to totally say that there's absolutely nothing.
Okay,
but broadly, yes, there could be little tweaks. There's always going to be little tweaks and things here and there, and little gaps that need to be plugged and so on. But like the big broad brush stuff has been dealt with over the decades and centuries.
Okay. So like the question that I kind of have is that like why do you think that the struggle that they were searching for, that you're saying people like are searching for like a struggle of some form, right? Like a load to carry, a fight to fight, why did it go in this weird, like we are all oppressed because of like our gender, race, sexuality, etc.? Why do you think it went there instead of, because like the thing that concerns me way more than those issues, actually I don't even care about them at all, is I feel like we're losing our control, or not even our sovereignty, but I feel like the people in charge of our country are no longer being put there by us to an extent, and they're not working for us at all. Like that is the big fight for me. It's just like we need to like wrestle back a little bit of control of the state from the ruling class as such, to the extent to which they have quite a big stranglehold on power. Like it's all coming from the same groups of people. They're all coming from the same financial class, and even if they're not, they're welcomed in, and then they get sort of subsumed by it in the way that like Obama did, for example. He was all hope and change until he got there, and then he sort of just became part of the machine. Like why did people not choose that fight? Because that seems like the obvious one to me.
Man, that's a wonderful question. I'm glad you asked that, because I think a lot of the cultural war stuff and a lot of the battles and a lot of stuff, I think it's distraction. I think it's to prevent exactly what you said. I think a lot of it is intentional, and I think it's very clever because whenever people start talking that way, they'll throw out another distraction. Have you noticed that? Whenever people start to cotton on to what you just said, and this happened towards the end of last year, people started to notice this COVID stuff, this like all these policies and these restrictions and what, like they've screwed us here. Wait, this vaccine stuff, there's some stuff coming out about this. There's some weird stuff going on here. Whatever. And then it's like, whoop, here, shiny thing. Here, new, drop the new current thing. Yeah. Drop the new thing. And boom, everyone's distracted again. Tell you when I really noticed this. I remember a time when, prior to stuff going weird, when there was an issue that both people on the left, people on the right were really not happy about, very irate against. Remember? 2008.
Oh, well, it was the bailouts.
Yeah, 2008, the bailouts. Occupy Wall Street. All right? People were not happy. Like, whether you are a conservative or libertarian or a liberal lefty, people were like, wait, no.
Yeah.
This is screwy, right? Like, there's a handful of people here who are profiting, making all these billions or whatever, and they're crashing the markets and they're screwing people over and they're making people losing their houses and inflation is rising and that kicked in. And I think that genuinely scared people. I think that genuinely scared some of the people at the top, right? I don't like to use the term elites because it makes it sound like they're above us.
I'm never sure what word to
use. But I think it scared those people in that class, and they were like, this has to be, this mob we need to get them to fight each other. And I think that also was a big catalyst for the ongoing constant culture war stuff, right? Because they just give people stuff to be mad at. It's like, I mean, look at the past 2 years. They literally got people to blame their neighbor, right? Do you know the problem? It's your neighbor who hasn't taken the vaccine. They psyoped hundreds of millions, if not billions of people to demonize and think that all of this problem is because there are some people who won't just take these injections. Right? That's why we need to ban the unvaccinated. You know what? Disinvite your family members from Christmas if they haven't taken it. You know what? Dump your boyfriend or girlfriend if they don't take it. You know what? Friendships you've had for decades, no, they shouldn't be allowed in your shop, in your restaurant, in the gyms. And people were psyoped to go along with it. That was actually when this thing really was freaking me out. Like when that rhetoric around mid last year, remember, it got really, really intense. There were newspaper articles and people on TV saying, what should we do about the unvaccinated? We need a solution, right? It started getting
when they used the word a solution.
It started getting really, really dark to anyone who's just slightly looked over history, right? Maybe we should put them in camps. You know what? Should they be denied healthcare? Right? Like these ideas were floated around. Right? Maybe they should just be jailed.
Floated,
they were implemented in some places.
There was people not getting heart transplants.
They were implemented in some places. In Austria, they did a lockdown of just unvaccinated people. Yeah, in Canada,
for a week. Actually, I had no friends who were there.
Yeah, in Canada, you still can't board a plane or a train or a bus without proof of vax. Like that's right now. And man, there's a good reason to be mad about what happened over the past 2 years. But who should you be mad at? You should be mad at the people who screwed everyone over, who forced you into lockdown, who forced you to do this and that, who lied to you. They said, literally, Dr. Fauci, Joe Biden, the president of the USA, and so on, if you take this vaccine, you will not get COVID. Mm-hmm. They explicitly said that. Director of the CDC, Rochelle Walensky, you can go back less than a year ago. Mm-hmm. They were all saying this. They lied. They lied about masks. They lied about lockdowns. They lied about the severity of the disease. Mm-hmm. They lied about They lied about 2 weeks to slow the spread and flatten the curve. They lied and lied and lied and lied.
But the efficacy as well, like we now know from the not even the leaks. Sorry, I don't want to even call them leaks. Like from the officially released Pfizer documents, they just lied straight up about the efficacy.
Yeah, so there's a lot of people who you should be mad at, but what they did, and this is what politicians and the media are so clever at, is redirecting that energy. It's like, no, it's us. It's not us. We care about you. It's that guy. It's those anti-vaxxers, and they called everyone anti-vaxxers, right? They started applying it to everybody. It's that person. It's that. And so and then I think after a while, people started to cotton on and go, wait, no, like even the people who like really bought into it started to question and challenge some of the stuff, right? And especially when they started pushing the boosters and all of that.
Also when they saw the vaccine wasn't working. I think that was the thing I think that's the straw that sort of made people go, hang on.
Yeah.
Well, if it doesn't actually stop you getting it, then why does it matter that Jim down the street didn't decide to do it?
Exactly. And then boom, they moved on to the next thing. So I think, in summary, I think that's the answer to your question. I think this is also why so many of these corporations do the woke pandering. Because, like, I've always been more right-leaning. I'm very much a capitalist type. But the natural enemy of giant corporations is supposed to be the left. And they've done something really clever, these corporations. They've realized we can appease our natural enemies by just giving them some crumbs. Like, we just throw out these words, diversity, inclusion, Black Lives Matter, put a rainbow flag up in June, do these little gestures, put out the occasional woke ad, and it pacifies those people. They no longer care about where our stuff is being manufactured, or the impact we're having on the environment, or how much profit we're making versus how much we're paying our workers versus the working, all those things that a traditional proper left, shall we say, and some elements of the right are like, but certainly left are kind of supposed to be like focused on and making sure that the workers, the party in the UK is called Labour, right? Like that the workers and all of that it's fair and people are not being mistreated and exploited and so on. But they've spun it around. They've turned them into Team Pfizer, Team Moderna.
It's completely insane, man, isn't it?
They've like reverse engineered it. So they've actually got most of the people who are like super pro big pharma and who are pro big tech and big tech censorship and all this. It's coming now from the left side of the political aisle, which is something that's like quite mind-blowing. I think if you went back to someone in, the 90s or the 80s and you said, do you think that, the left is going to be shilling for, putting Team Moderna in there, getting Pfizer tattoos, you'd be like, no, like no. That doesn't make sense. That's the anti-establishment, wing. If anyone does that, it's going to be those corporatist rightists, right? It's going to be those, and it's just spun around. It's spun around, and I think some of that has been intentional from the corporations. I think they know that, okay, we can just do that. I don't think that they, certainly the people at the top of these corporations, I'm not convinced that they themselves are super woke progressive types, right? I think those are the biggest capitalists those are the biggest capitalists in the world, but they know, what, we can just, hey, it's June coming up.
Yeah.
Throw out that rainbow flag. Change.
That'll absolve us of the money laundering.
Just put that out. Oh, Black Lives. Oh, you know what? Just put the BLM thing. Like, just put out some email notice about how much we like black people or whatever, and
that's enough. Unfortunately,
it's enough.
But that's weird for me because I would, if you take, I'm not like 100% like a big fan of the political compass test, but I'd be like reasonably far left and reasonably libertarian on it. Like, I'm not the whole way down to the bottom corner, but like, I feel so abandoned by the left. Yeah. I feel completely like politically homeless because I'm like, hang on, how can I vote for the people who are happy defending the worst corporations in the world? But at the same time, I'm like, I still believe that the state has like some good to do, but there's nobody representing that opinion anywhere.
Man, I think a lot of people feel politically homeless right now, man. I'll tell you what's even deeper about it all, especially with when you're talking about the mandates, which is Pfizer, Moderna, J&J, and so on. These are publicly traded corporations. Publicly traded, multi-billion, multinational corporations. A mandate means you are forced to become a customer of a for-profit corporation. No one makes this point. That is unheard of. Right? You are making a mandate. It would be like make a mandate that you must drink Red Bull, right? You have to buy Red Bull. Red Bull is owned by who's Red Bull owned by? I don't know. Is it just its own company? Okay,
I think it is.
I think it is actually. Yeah, I don't think it might not be under anyone. But imagine like Coca-Cola being mandated or something. or anything. Like if you think about it, I can't think of a situation where it's mandatory, or they're pushing for it to be mandatory, to become a customer of a specific company, which is obviously a for-profit company, and also which the people in power have stock in, right? So in the USA, all of these politicians own shares in Moderna and Johnson & Johnson and Pfizer and so on, right?
Oh, don't pay attention to that.
And so that makes it even, to me, that makes it even nuttier. Like, beyond the ethics of trying to mandate an injection, it's like trying to mandate any product, right? Whether it is, I can't. Can you think of any example?
No, I've just been rocking my brain there. I can't think of anything.
Yeah, I mean, you could certainly say that. Look, you need to buy various products and services to survive, basically, in the world, but not from a specific company. You're not forced to shop at Tesco.
No.
Right? You're not forced
Thank God.
or when you're in Tesco, you're not forced to, you're not in the supermarket, you can choose what products you buy. You can choose what clothes you wear. It's not, no, you have to buy from M&S. You must become an M&S customer, or we're going to deny you certain rights and privileges. It's like, no, but that's another thing that they've done, which is unprecedented, which is that, no, you must become a customer of Pfizer to get back those rights that you used to have. And of course, there's the whole fact that, the shot could harm you, and it's unethical to, force someone to inject something and so on, violation of the Nuremberg Code. But what I just brought up there, like, I don't think many people have thought of that point of kind of being a forced customer for not even a governmental service, but a public corporation that trades on the stock market, in which you can buy shares in, and which people have all sorts of, Big Pharma's it's the biggest. I think they have the most lobbyists of any industry in the USA.
I think big tech are giving them a run for their money.
Maybe big tech and
military,
industry. Yeah, but they've got a lot of sway, especially in the US.
Yeah.
It's not as, politics here is far from perfect, but the sort of corporate lobbying is not. No, in the US, it's like, we saw
campaign finance restrictions of some form here, at least. I mean, I'll not get into that. So the last question I want to ask you, so we're about 10 minutes here.
Sure.
So the last question I want to ask you is, that kind of ties into what you were saying here about the left kind of forgiving these large corporations. Do you think that ideology has replaced religion, in a sense? And do you think that's possibly the reason that the left are so happy to forgive these monstrous corporations, is because they're supporting the correct religion?
Yes, I do. Absolutely. I've made this point many a times. Ironically, I think we're living in one of the most religious times of our lifetimes. And I say religious in air quotes.
Yeah.
Because I don't mean that in the traditional sense, but in terms of people's behavior and beliefs on lots of different levels. There are these, what I would call secular religions, or certainly ideologies, which have parasitized people, right? And which are spreading. You have the entire woke thing, from the racial component to the gender component. The gender component might be probably the biggest, because it's literally got its own superstitions and unprovable beliefs and dogma and so on, right? It's got its own blasphemy laws, right? You can't dead naming, misgendering, and so on and so forth. It's like, no, you must believe if we say a trans woman is a woman, you must adopt this belief. And you must then conclude that women can have penises and men can give birth, and
except men can't have any discussion in the reproductive conversation.
Exactly. It switches back,
even though we can be pregnant.
It switches back and forth depending on what is convenient at the time. But there's that the whole COVID thing, right? The Branch Covidian behavior, the masking, the sanitizing, the bizarre rituals, people entering restaurants, the vaccination itself is. I've compared the vaccination to baptism. Right? Or perhaps even one could perhaps go further and compare it to like circumcision way, way, way back in the day, whereas someone is considered unclean and someone who you should not even be around if they have not had this procedure. They are not one of you. People, you have to remember, millions of people pushed away their own friends and family members over this, right? There are people who got uninvited from Thanksgiving and Christmas dinners, birthday parties, work events, and so on because they hadn't had the shot. Now, if the shot works, there is no logical reason why you should have a concern about whether or not someone has taken it. If it doesn't work, then it makes no sense to want other people to take it. But millions of people fell into this bizarre behavior where they decided that literally that taking this shot is more important than their social ties, than their familial bonds. There are couples who got divorced over this. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So that's real. If you think about it, like that's deep. That's deeper than, like, if I'm a Christian. If I refuse to associate, speak to, be in the same room as someone who does not share my religious beliefs, people would say he's an extremist. He is extreme. He's a religious zealot. He's not just a Christian. He is someone who will not even, no tolerance whatsoever of someone who, you're not baptized? Get up, leave the, right? And people did this with the vaccine, right? So it's not even religious in like the sort of like modern, modern tolerance.
No. It's very
religious and like the
medieval,
like medieval type of like very, very harsh, discriminatory type. And that's how people have been behaving on many of these different fronts. There are people who, won't be friends with, again, this is worse in the USA, but, won't be friends with someone who's on the other side of the political line. By the way, they've even done studies showing people on the left are way more intolerant. Most conservatives would be friends with someone who they know is liberal, but
that's generally my experience.
Yeah, but there are people who call themselves liberal, which is ironic given the proper meaning of the word, who won't, they wouldn't date, be friends with, hang out with someone who's a Republican or who's a conservative because, no, we can't even tolerate that. You see this in universities. You see it at some of the big tech companies and so on. It's so one-sided. So it's strange. And I think in many ways people made the government God over the past couple of years. They look at these politicians and the Faucis, look, this is the way they treated Fauci in the USA,
Fauci,
right?
Biden and the Holy Kamala.
Yeah. The whole thing was very, very strange. The mask stuff was very weird, and it's also hit me very obviously because I grew up in Saudi Arabia, and so the whole face covering in public thing was always a kind of hot topic, especially when I was discussing the country with Westerners and people. There are Western countries that went from ban face coverings, ban the burqa, to mandate the burqa. Right?
Remember this discussion like 3-4 years ago about like how you couldn't have nurses with a burqa, especially in old people's homes, because old people, like it's a serious point about it's like a
trust.
Yeah, it's about trust. It's about communication. It's about understanding
and security.
Security, and then for children as well, it should be the same. You shouldn't like cover your face because they need to see your face to understand and trust you. It was the same. Like you can't even wear a motorcycle helmet going into a fucking bank because you're covering your face for security purposes, and all of it out the window.
No, not just out the window. Reversed.
Yeah.
No, from banning to mandating. In 2018, in 2019, if you were about to go into a shop or an Uber or a bank and you put on a bandana or a mask, they'd be like, well, the security guard's like, wait, hold up. We can't wear that in here. And then it's the opposite. You try to walk in with no mask. They're like, wait, no, stop. Like, you have to cover up your face. So that's why it blew my mind, because it wasn't just like a shift. It was an inversion. It was like a switch. It was like, wait, you've literally gone from wanting to ban this thing to mandating it. Like that's nuts. I'll tell you another crazy switcheroo that happened is, if you remember,
90 seconds.
No worries, man. You didn't see this much in the UK, but if you remember in 2020, because remember the vaccines came out under the Trump administration, and the people who were against it was the lefties, it was the Democrats, all the way up to Kamala Harris, who were saying, I don't know if you should take this thing, and then spun around.
Fucking crazy. Well, anyway, yeah, to wrap up, because, we only have like 1 minute left of the room and I have to pack up the stuff. So, Zuby, thank you very much, man.
Appreciate it.
Fucking pleasure. Great chat. Zuby Music on YouTube, Twitter, anything else?
Instagram, at Zuby Music, ZUBY Music, and zubymusic.com. You can find all links there.
Yeah, links are in the description below. Thank you. Thanks for making it all the way to the end of the podcast. If you want to leave us a comment, that would be awesome. Please like, share, subscribe, and if you're listening on Apple, please leave us a review. Until next time, thanks for listening.